Traore's drone strike shocks the world. That's the headline racing across social feeds, echoing through comment sections, and lighting up group chats. But what actually happened? What is confirmed? And what message is really being sent to the West? Tonight, we bring you inside the new air war over the Sahel, the hardware, the strategy, the politics, and the information battle behind the claims. Stay with me, because by the end you will have a clear map of the facts, the rumors, and the stakes that Washington, Paris, Ankara, and Moscow are all watching very closely. Let's begin with what we can verify. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso has rapidly expanded its drone capabilities, following a wider Sahel trend. Turkish-made systems, especially the Bayraktar TB2 and the larger, longer-range Akinci, have become central to how governments in the region hunt insurgent groups and defend key routes. These drones are not theory. They are deployed, armed, and used for surveillance and strike missions against militants who until recently could move with relative freedom across difficult terrain. This tactical shift has transformed battlefields where ground forces were stretched thin and ambushes were frequent. At the same time, a second truth is unavoidable. Drone warfare has produced serious civilian harm across multiple African conflicts, including in Burkina Faso. Rights organizations have documented cases in which markets, funerals, and populated areas were struck with deadly results. Those incidents are contested by authorities, but the pattern is clear enough to alarm humanitarian groups, independent analysts, and even some military professionals. Precision is promised. Precision is sometimes delivered. But precision is not guaranteed, especially when intelligence is weak, rules of engagement are loose, or militants deliberately blend into civilian spaces. So what about the shock of a single decisive drone strike? In recent months, the entire region has been on edge. Algeria announced that it shot down a drone near its border with Mali, a dramatic incident that triggered a diplomatic brawl between Algiers and the alliance of Sahel states Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. That standoff led to ambassadors being recalled and airspace restrictions being tossed back and forth like thunderbolts. Whether you see that as a sovereignty flex by a North African power or as an overstep against Sahel states, the message was unmistakable: drones are now political signals as much as they are weapons. The battlefield has migrated into the diplomatic arena. Inside Burkina Faso, the military's reliance on drones fits into a larger promise Traoré has made to his public: reverse territorial losses, shatter insurgent logistics, and restore basic state control. For supporters, drones symbolize autonomy, proof that the country no longer needs French troops, Western trainers, or foreign decision-making to defend itself. For critics, drones symbolize another danger: power concentrated in a small command circle, weak oversight, a higher risk of mistakes, and a media environment where independent reporting is scarce and retaliation against critics is a real fear. The West, meanwhile, has a vantage point but not full control. France's footprint has contracted. The United States is recalibrating. Europe is divided between security cooperation and human rights concerns. As traditional partners step back or become less welcome, new suppliers step forward. Turkey has carved out a major role as a fast, flexible provider of combat drones, training, and support. Russia has stepped in with aircraft, advisors, and political messaging that reinforces the Sahel's sovereignty narrative. This is why a single strike, real, rumored, or magnified, can feel like an earthquake. It is not just about one explosion. It is about which flag is stitching itself into the region's future. Let's talk about the drone playbook. The TB2 is a medium-altitude, long-endurance platform designed to loiter, watch, and hit with precision munitions when a target is identified. The Akinci goes further, carrying heavier payloads and operating at greater range with better sensors. In theory, these aircraft make it possible to track a convoy, fix a training camp, or disrupt an ambush before it happens. In practice, effectiveness depends on ground intelligence, data links, weather, and the discipline of those authorizing fire. Every step from target queuing to final release matters. In a war where militants ride motorcycles, slip through villages, and use human shields, the difference between a successful strike and a tragedy can be measured in seconds and meters. Insurgent groups are adapting. They move at night. They build decoys. They disperse. Some copy tactics from other theaters, using small commercial drones for scouting or converted first-person view devices for close-range attacks. They study state drone patterns and try to bait responses. They circulate videos of civilian casualties, real, staged, or misattributed, to erode trust and to recruit. Information warfare is not an accessory in the Sahel. It is a main front. Any dramatic strike will be narrated by multiple actors within minutes: military press offices, opposition voices, local activists, foreign ministries, neighboring armies, and an online ecosystem that rewards speed over verification. This is why responsible analysis separates three layers of truth. First, what is confirmed by multiple, independent sources with dates, locations, and imagery that can be geolocated and cross-checked. Second, what is plausible given known capabilities, operating areas, and patterns. Third, what is propaganda claims designed to shape perception rather than to describe reality. When you hear that Traore's drone strike shocked the world, ask, shocked with what, exactly? A verified high-value target neutralized? A breach of another country's airspace? A civilian disaster that can't be ignored? Or a carefully crafted narrative with just enough footage to go viral? The geopolitical backdrop cannot be ignored. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have formally left the ECOWAS bloc and formed their own alignment. For many in the region, that move signals a break with what they view as an unfair system dominated by outside interests. For critics, it is a retreat that risks isolation, weaker trade, and fewer safety valves when mistakes happen. When drones become the symbol of that new posture, they also become lightning rods. A strike can be read as a sovereign right, a warning to neighbors, or a provocation, sometimes all three at once. Let's zoom in on the message to the West. First, it is a declaration of agency. Sahel governments are saying, we will buy, learn, and use modern tools regardless of Western approval. Second, it is a demand for respect in the security conversation. If Western partners want to cooperate, they must accept that local priorities drive targeting decisions, not Paris or Washington. Third, it is leverage. By demonstrating that operations can continue with support from Turkey or Russia, Sahel states strengthen their bargaining position with Europe and the United States. Fourth, and this is crucial, it is a test of credibility. If drone campaigns reduce attacks, reopen roads, and return displaced families safely, the message gains moral weight. If they fuel atrocities and displacement, the message collapses into a warning sign. There is also a domestic message. Traore's government needs to show results. Drones offered visible results: destroyed vehicles, flattened camps, intercepted convoys. These images travel faster than nuanced accounts of governance reform, reconciliation, or long-term development. But the counterinsurgency lesson from other places is clear. Aerial power can change momentum, but it rarely ends a conflict by itself. Secure communities, trusted local forces, and legitimate courts matter as much as any flight hour logged by a drone. What should responsible use look like? Tight rules of engagement built around verified intelligence. Real-time legal oversight when feasible. A clear chain of accountability for mistakes, with compensation and public reporting. Cooperation with humanitarian actors to mark protected sites and avoid predictable civilian gatherings. Restraint around markets, funerals, and schools unless there is overwhelming evidence of imminent threat and no alternative. And above all, the political will to prosecute those who violate the laws of war, regardless of rank. Let's examine the information environment more closely, because your feed shapes your reality. When a clip emerges of a strike, ask where the footage originated. Who benefits from the timing? Can the location be matched with satellite imagery, landmarks, or prior reporting? Are there corroborating photos from multiple angles? Are the munitions consistent with what is publicly known to be in the arsenal? If one account claims a high-value militant was killed, are there follow-up confirmations from reliable sources? In the Sahel, and increasingly worldwide, information dominance is part of air dominance. For viewers in the United States, here is why this matters to you. The Sahel sits at the intersection of migration routes, transnational crime, and extremist networks that seek propaganda victories far beyond Africa. American policy choices aid, training, sanctions, and diplomatic pressure shape incentives. If Washington conditions cooperation solely on human rights metrics without offering a viable security pathway, Sahel governments will look elsewhere. If Washington ignores civilian protection because it prioritizes short-term counterterrorism, grievances deepen and insurgents benefit. Turkey's rise as a drone supplier is also part of a broader conversation about where U.S. influence is receding and how quickly new actors fill the vacuum. Now, about the shock factor. What shocks the world is not only a precise hit. It is the moment when technology, sovereignty, and narrative collide. A drone strike that hits insurgent leadership while minimizing collateral damage sends a message of competence: we can handle our own security. A strike that violates a neighbor's airspace or kills civilians sends the opposite message: we can act, but at the cost of stability and legitimacy. In a region where borders are porous and communities straddle lines on a map, that difference matters. It matters for cross-border trade, for refugee flows, and for whether diplomatic doors remain open or slammed shut. So what message is Traore sending to the West through drone power? He is saying that Burkina Faso will define its security partnerships on its own terms. He is saying that the era of depending on French bases and Western trainers is over, or at least radically reduced. He is saying that if the West wants to engage, it should do so as an equal, not a tutor. He is also betting that domestic audiences will accept the risks of drone warfare in exchange for the promise of safety. Whether that bet pays off will be measured not by one viral strike, but by whether families can travel without fear, farmers can plant and sell, and displaced people can return home without being caught between militants and the state. Before we turn to your voices, here is a final thought. Drones are tools. They reflect the ethics of their users and the pressures of their environment. In conflicts where communities are traumatized, where militants hide among civilians, and where states are fighting for legitimacy, the line between smart power and reckless force is painfully thin. Crossing that line can win a day's headlines and lose a decade's trust. Here are questions for you, and I want you to answer them in the comments with your reasoning. Do you believe drones have reduced violence in the Sahel, or have they shifted it out of sight? What standards should determine when a strike is authorized in a crowded area? If Western governments condition security cooperation on strict civilian protection benchmarks, would that improve outcomes or simply push Sahel states toward other partners? When a neighbor shoots down a drone near a border, is that a defensive necessity or an escalation that invites more confrontation? And the biggest one of all, can aerial power meaningfully succeed without visible progress in justice, governance, and reconciliation on the ground? If you found this analysis clear and valuable, make sure you subscribe to AfriPol Lens, turn on notifications, and share this video with friends who follow Africa policy and global security. Your support allows us to keep doing field-grounded reporting and nuanced analysis instead of just chasing headlines. If you disagree with parts of this, tell me why in the comments, and bring sources. Keep it respectful, keep it specific, and I will highlight the most thoughtful responses in a future episode. If you want a follow-up deep dive into drone sourcing, training pipelines, and how open-source investigators verify strike locations, tell me that too. We can build that together with your questions and suggestions. As we close, here is what I ask from you. Subscribe if you want independent analysis that treats Africa as central, not peripheral. Like this video if you want more long-form breakdowns that cut through noise and get to verified facts. Comment with your own policy recommendations, rules of engagement that would actually protect civilians while still allowing security forces to defeat insurgents. And tell me which country or city you want us to cover next, because what happens in the Sahel rarely stays in the Sahel. It shapes diplomacy in Washington and Brussels, it affects energy routes and migration conversations, and it influences how future wars will be fought everywhere.